Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking in to our latest TDR Trade to Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Busy Wednesday. What did you all think of that Senate banking hearing today? Cannabis brought up not once, but I don't know how many times, but it was good to see. Senator Elizabeth Warren got things going along with Senator Thom Tillis and then a few others at the hearing itself. So what was everyone's big takeaway and how should you interpret this based off of today's news? With that, let's welcome in AV, which I think... overall, what'd you think? I think it was, look, if you're going to bring up cannabis, that's the room to bring it up in, right?
I was pleasantly surprised. I was very surprised. I said last week, I was like, I'm not expecting us to be included in this hearing. The senator or chairman of the committee, Tim Scott, was very, very adamant about federally legal businesses, which I kind of wanted to read into. And cannabis is not federally legal.
Yeah.
I thought that was his out. I thought that was his way of isolating us and putting us on an island, despite us needing banking reform worse than anybody probably in the country.
Yeah.
Right now as an industry, like we keep saying, there's 500,000 employees, $30 billion in revenue, and a lot of the employees in the industry can't have formal banking relationships,
Which was brought up
and
a number of times.
To have a formal bank account is really one of the only ways you can ever utilize this country to the fullest and really achieve the American dream. And that is not really being taken very serious up until today. I was very impressed with Senator Warren weaving it into her opening remarks. Senator Tillis, I don't believe him as far as I can throw him, but
I was going to ask you that.
If he wants to say that he is for federal reform, and he wants to say that he said he's not for banking reform, just so we're clear. He said banking reform before federally legitimizing the industry is kind of circumventing the process. I don't really agree with that. These businesses are all legal right now from a state perspective. Gretchen says Tillis is gettable. I believe her. I'll take that at face value.
Okay.
I had an opinion when Senator Tillis came out a couple weeks back, maybe even a couple months ago, saying that he was not for banking reform, but he was for federal legalization. And people were like, yeah, he's kind of just saying that to basically just stall the progress, really kind of wolf in sheep's clothing. And I kind of took that tack today. And then obviously we saw Vivek on Bill Maher's podcast saying that federal cannabis regulations are a farce. And they need to be brought up to speed and put in line with the state regulations that we see. Conversations progressing everywhere. We aren't any further than where we started because we need action. But it's great to see.
Very good to see. I want to get into more of this in just a moment. I did want to highlight Into the Wire off the top, and it's about Pennsylvania and their governor, Josh Shapiro, who's reiterating about the importance of passing adult use cannabis, especially knowing that 5 of their 6 neighboring states include, Ohio, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, and Delaware, all have adult use cannabis programs. But from what we're hearing, by him actually announcing this publicly, it's almost like firing off the starting gun to get the powers to be in the state legislature to get them to start talking. Like we've known in the past that Republicans want something in return, but if this needs to get done, they're actually saying that we want you in the room negotiating this, Governor Shapiro, which sounds like he's now prepared to do. So after speaking to Michael Braunstein today, sounds like this has actually gone to the next level, and fingers crossed, we march one step closer to actually getting this passed at some point this year.
Yeah, I don't want to say PA is a lock, as I never like to use that language, but PA sounds like it is it's at least half baked. All things considered, Governor Shapiro came out very, very in favor of this. He also added a social justice element to it about expunging nonviolent cannabis offenders in the state of Pennsylvania. That's great. Put as much criminal justice reform in there as you can without kind of tipping the scales.
Yeah.
This is great. Pennsylvania is a big market for GTI, TrueLeaf, TerraSend, a lot of the companies that we talk about on a daily basis here. And I mean, just having another big state flip from med to rec will be big for the industry. And at least it's a win that we can put on the scoreboard.
Key revenue drivers, and I say drivers because there's two main issues going on in the state legislature right now, which is not only marijuana, but also, Michael was telling me, it's called skill games. Those are the main two priorities. And people might ask, what do you mean by skill games? Like they're online video games that are unregulated that people can gamble. So I asked, like, where are these found? But he's just like, gas stations, convenience stores, taverns. I guess never puts food on the table, but these are big revenue drivers. There's over 70,000 unregulated slot machines in the state right now, that he was saying to me here today. So let's hope by this going public now, this becomes official.
If you're playing slot machines at the gas station, you might need to reevaluate what you're doing with your life.
Not to mention, well, what happens if you're an owner of a tavern? I guess whatever puts food on the table.
Well, that's good, because it's like Vegas. You sit at the bar, you play the games, and they give you free drinks.
Could you not get shut down? Yeah.
I mean, you would also think that half of the illegal hemp dispensaries and cannabis dispensaries in this country would be shut down at face value, but here we are.
Gretchen, you're right. Gambling is always an issue in Pennsylvania, aka Philadelphia. What was Robert De Niro's character in Silver Linings Playbook? That gives you an inside look at some of these Eagles fans. Can you imagine some of the bets that are going on in that city this weekend?
Yeah.
Well, let's shift our attention back to the safe banking hearing. Let's welcome back in the executive director of the United States Cannabis Roundtable, Saphira Galoob, who has big smiles on her face. You look great today. Saw you in the crowd. We were cheering you on, but a good day, I think, for most that are looking at this industry right now. But what was your take, from it all? Were you surprised that cannabis was brought up?
I wasn't surprised that cannabis was brought up, because we had been working closely with staff and with witnesses. And I would love to talk a little bit about some of the behind the scenes efforts that actually resulted in cannabis being mentioned towards a half a dozen times. I mean, even Rounds mentioning it in a way that reflects his lack of support. It's important that we're part of the conversation. I was actually sitting next to Gretchen. So if you saw that lovely redhead, 2 seats down from me, we got to see each other this morning. So great to see her there. So some big takeaways. First of all, the fact that we weren't the starring role, but we were a supporting role in what is becoming and what will become a very high priority in not just Senate banking, but House Financial Services and with this administration. So debanking is something that the Safe Banking Act and the Safer Banking Act and has been built in and threaded into the rubric of our legislation for years.
Yeah.
So the fact that we were brought up today is, I mean, obviously it makes sense from our industry's standpoint, but the policy work that has gone on behind the scenes for years, it wasn't at all a surprise to me that we were mentioned as many times as we were.
It's great.
So where do we go from here? I mean, there was some positive things that were said. There were some of the same faces that were saying some lines. Senator Warren obviously looks like she's a friend of the industry. I know that she wrote a very well-informed letter to RFK relating to rescheduling. She's now talking about banking. Like, what are some of the expectations, or what is procedurally where you think we're headed from here? Because I don't want to say we've seen this before, but we kind of have.
Well, I'll say we haven't seen this before, because in the past, we've been desperate as an industry just to have our own hearing.
Yeah.
Today, we were a part of a broader policy discussion around banking disruption and debanking in the industry.
Yeah.
I will say Senator or Chairman Scott actually entered a letter in the record from Kyle Sherman from FlowHub, which is one of the leading technology companies in this space, articulating both FlowHub's issues with debanking and banking disruption, as well as his employees. That letter was entered into the record by the chairman. So we have support across both sides of the aisle, and we have an evolving connectivity with this issue that when debanking finally makes its way into a bill and passes into what I think will be an inevitable, whether it's a crypto space or it's a debanking or it's a community banking, because all these are plausible pathways, we will be a part of that journey.
Yeah.
And it's the work that we've had. I mean, I know that, and Chad and Anthony, you and I have had these conversations in person. It is really hard being on the outside of DC and seeing that progress is being made, because frankly, we haven't delivered a win. But what have we done? We are now part of the conversation, not just by the opening remarks of Warren, but two witnesses who weren't even brought into this hearing to discuss banking. But they understood that it was a relevant inclusion because our industry is so dramatically impacted.
Yeah,
I know that Aaron Klein also had comments submitted into the record via his testimony. Am I looking too much into that? As far I know how much weight the Brookings Institute carries. Are they looking further into the industry from an economic standpoint in any sort of way, or should we see them as an ally for, let's say, the movement moving forward? Because I was surprised to see him speaking about it as well as submitting that testimony into the record for the hearing.
You know, Brookings has engaged with the industry in a lot of different ways over the years. I mean, sometimes they tend to have a more progressive lean. I think this was very, very interesting because that subject matter expert, and if you read his testimony, which I think Thom included it in one of the articles, he understands the issue. Yeah. He understands the reason that it exists, and his policy proposals and his fixes would help and would address. So you take somebody like him or somebody like Stephen Gannon, who is an expert in debanking. He sees the impact. And I know that there is this distinction between legal and illegal, but one of the things that Stephen Gannon brought up, which I am so grateful that his expertise is part of influencing this conversation. And that is, as a reminder, corporations, which are considered people, that can sue and be sued, are only creatable. You can only create a corporation as a vehicle for state law or under state law. You can't have a federal corporation. So the very idea that we can create a legal business that doesn't have access to financial services is completely upside down with the way businesses can be created. So I think that is not lost on this, on the dais there. And while we have members, including Thom Tillis, whose approach is that, listen, I don't want to address cannabis reform through banking. He wants to address it from a change in its legal status. We're getting signals that as we make momentum from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, we will therefore garner more champions and more support for people understanding the importance of financial services.
This only, I think, builds the narrative more, where we keep talking about associating ourselves with something, and like crypto was brought up a lot, and for cannabis to be tied at the hip, you know, with this today, I think this makes sense. It's not a standalone, and now we're being involved in conversations and comparisons because, you know, Senator Warren made some good points up and saying like millions of Americans are debanked every single year, mentioning an example like somebody with the same name as a criminal has been debanked, which I can't imagine being in that situation. But she also was saying like lawful cannabis companies and their employees. And from my interpretation from it all, and I know you mentioned this too, Anthony, she sounded like this is something that needs to get done. She wants to know why this has been delayed. Do you believe her in this case?
I absolutely too. In fact, Kyle and I had a direct conversation with her afterwards. And specifically articulating that we're not just talking about plant touching, we're talking about ancillary business suppliers and all the employees that work for the entire ecosystem. Not only does she get it, she understands the urgency about it. And while Chairman Scott hasn't been a champion for us, and he hasn't stood in the way before, I think he really is understanding the unfairness element of it. And for him, I mean, he's a very reasonable gentleman, and he is an outstanding policy wonk. We'll get him there. It just needs more time and more examples of the individuals who have been impacted by banking disruption and debanking. And I think Flow had submitted, I think they had an element within their system that allowed cannabis industry to write stories. And I think they said there were hundreds. I mean, definitely, a significant number of stories to share with the Senate Banking Committee, and more of that educates, informs, and gives enthusiasm to these policymakers to address it.
Great.
The fact that we were included in this conversation, and like you had said, this is a much more large issue. We're not only talking about the cannabis industry specifically, we're talking about debanking as a whole. From a vehicle standpoint, is it probably going to be we get attached to another bill that gets through, or is there still a chance, let's say, that Safer could find its way to get through standalone?
So I will tell you, no matter what anybody says, we've never thought we were going to be a standalone. I mean, even though we went through the Senate banking hearing and we went with a call regular order and the policy was reviewed in a hearing, we have always known that we were going to have to take a ride with a bigger vehicle, whether it was a must-pass vehicle or included in language such as, you know, a debanking or a crypto. There's a community banking bill going through the House. There's reconciliation happening. There's going to be tax reform. I mean, there's going to be a lot of moving vehicles this year, and one of it is politically strategic. Like, we've got to be politically strategic, but we also need to make sure that we align with the administration's priorities. You know, President Trump not only articulated on the campaign trail that he supports access to legal financial services for legal businesses, he supports rescheduling to go to a Schedule 3. I absolutely think that the more information that gets to him regarding the fact that foreign companies can list on our U.S. exchanges and U.S. companies cannot, his head is going to explode. So it is an issue that obviously he's taken some pretty big swings already in his administration, and we just have to wait and make sure that when our pitch is ready, he knocks us out of the park, which I think he will.
Yeah, we had Tyler Burline from Safe Harbor on last Friday. He was saying, I know for a fact that, referring to President Trump, about the 500,000 jobs are actually not, you know, reported on the job statistical report. And that's something that is, let's face it, to me, it's common sense. If you want to lead with something, it's right then and there, especially if you know what he stands for. But, you know, we look at this and say, like, why hasn't this happened in the past? It's just, everything's got to all line. There's a lot of moving parts, and I can't think of a better time, you know, when you think about the amount of times he mentions crypto, but timing's everything in a lot of this right now. And as you said, this is never going to be a standalone. So let's see where we go from here. But I guess the big takeaway today was a very positive day for the industry, is what you're saying.
100%. Industry should be very, very happy. And I will tell you, it is time for industry to get off its heels, push on its toes. And it is time. If you haven't ever invested in federal activity, then you cannot complain. And if you are investing, just know that with the joining of USCC and NCR to USCR, you've got best in class busting it on the Hill. We are all hands on deck. While I was on the Senate hearing, we had members on the House side having discussions with House leadership and House Financial Services. There is so much traction and shoe leather being spent right now on Capitol Hill on behalf of this industry. It is worthwhile to note.
You and Gretchen sitting at the front row. Men talk about a problem and women know how to get it done, right?
From your mouth to God's ears.
Let's keep in touch. But good job here today, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Well, that's positive news to say the least. And so, but timing's everything. You know, all things got to align. And when you talk about Trump's interest in crypto and cannabis not being a standalone, fingers crossed.
Well, you've got Senator Haggerty that just filed the Genius Act, which is it's going to be a heavy stablecoin bill. Senator Lummis, I don't know if she's combined her bill into that, but there's heavy stablecoin legislation and crypto-backed bills that are going to be popping up here very quickly. And I'm assuming that those stablecoin bills, I don't want to call them a function of, let's say, national security or priority, but Trump wants them done. Sachs wants the stablecoin bills done. The stablecoin bills and the guidance is how crypto starts to emerge in the United States and how they could formalize everything. Elon said that he wanted to put the treasury on a blockchain.
Okay, so that's the first thing you should watch and pay attention to regarding crypto is what you're suggesting.
Yeah, the stablecoin bills. Those stablecoin bills are going to move quickly.
Okay. Let's keep our attention and focus on Washington and someone who has a wealth of experience being there, but is now living in the Sunshine State and a friend of the podcast. Welcome back, Mr. Brady Cobb. Good to see you. How are you, sir?
Gentlemen, how are we doing?
We good. We're good. So I heard a rumor that we could be stepping into the beverage side because Americans like their beverages. Is that true?
Americans, our entire society has been conditioned that if you are doing something social, there should be something in one of your hands when you're of legal age, of course.
Yes. We'll get into that in just a moment, but I want to bring up this whole banking hearing. Do you look at it as a win today for the space? Are you reading much into it?
So, I mean, look, there's going to be the haters online that say, it's just another mention, but they don't understand the process. And I've been preaching incrementalism since 2014. And I very much agree with what Saphira said. I will, give her credit. She was one of the few people that was walking the halls of DC back in the early days before there was, NCR and USCC and Attach and all these organizations that have sprung up. There was a small group of us that were up there. So she's, her narrative on it is very much on point for me. And it's that you don't just organically come up in a Senate hearing. Think of judicial hearings. 90% of it is the WWF. It's scripted. You work with staff ahead of hearings, issues are worked. When I say work ahead of hearings, I'm talking like you work years to work up the issue list. We used to be a C issue as a cannabis. And when I started lobbying up there, we were mostly focused on Republicans. In hindsight, we probably should have focused a little bit on Democrats too, because they seem to have railroaded us a few times. But be that as it may, we focused to even get in the room and have an intelligent conversation about cannabis was an uphill battle, because they're like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Now to be brought up in probably one of the first real Senate hearings that wasn't involving a presidential appointment for an agency is a big deal. And I'm not overstating it, because I know I have in the past, but I don't overstate it. I wouldn't say I overstate it. I would say that I'm familiar with the process, and to make it into the hearing and to have information entered into the record on your issue is it's a big deal. And this is the second time. State banking had its hearing, and today was a debanking hearing that was for legal federal businesses, was what the hearing was actually about. And somehow a federally illegal business got a lot of airtime and got, evidence entered into the record, statements entered into the record. Kudos to Kyle Sherman. I thought he did a fantastic job in getting his comments in there and having that included. That I can just tell you, that's not an easy thing to get done. You have to do a lot of work and spend some real time in DC to make that happen. So I read it as a very positive step.
Good.
I also saw that representative that filed the bill to basically upend the rescheduling process withdrew it today. Which was, I look for breadcrumbs.
Read between the lines, right?
I always look for breadcrumbs. Sometimes it leads me into a brick wall. Sometimes it leads me to a good place, but I look for breadcrumbs. So you see that happen. And then I'm a big fan, and I've been a big advocate well before it was in vogue that I thought President Trump was going to do something in the White House. I think I was probably one of the early people to say that, just like I was one of the early people to talk about, I believe alcohol was going to come into the space in a big way, which goes to what we were talking about at the outset. So I still think President Trump is going to step up in a massive way here, in a way that'll surprise a lot of people.
Let's hope.
And I think Pam Bondi her getting confirmed is a big deal. And ours, obviously, we talked yesterday, Anthony, but RFK getting through his hearing yesterday was a big deal. So
huge.
What is it? Fucking Wednesday, and we already had pretty blockbuster 3 days. So pretty excited to be at Wednesday and be talking about this stuff.
I know.
Yeah, it's funny. You've got the naysayers that have that infamous picture of Pam Bondi with the no pot signs, that forget to actually give context that was under the guise of, I think, Rick Scott back in 2016 when he was reeling against cannabis in Florida. So I mean, there's a lot of people that want to twist messaging out there as it relates to the purview. Yeah, I
was a part of that process in 2016, and I was an attorney at Tripp Scott for a number of years, and we were outside counsel. We were very close with Rick Scott. I've got a picture here in my office from his first inauguration. We went to the inaugural ball, know him, know his family, have know Attorney General Bondi, and have worked with her. We were outside counsel to the AG's office. There's narrative for the sake of narrative, and then there's fact. And in our case, sometimes people's partisan blinders don't let them see the facts.
Correct.
Well, in the media industry, as we say, love or hate you, that's a good thing. But if they're not talking about you, that's the problem. And we're talking about it, right?
How are you thinking about
guys? We're in a Senate.
It's a big deal. How are you thinking about? I mean, in our backyard in Florida, how are you thinking about what's going on currently in Tallahassee with the refiling from Smart and Safe, with the language that Joe Gruder's filed for home grow? Do you think this kind of bodes well with the gubernatorial race, or it's just kind of posturing and there's a lot of things going on in Tallahassee, let's say, that'll supersede anything really going on with cannabis come 2026?
Yeah, we've got us, we're always going to be superseded in Tallahassee. I mean, Tallahassee's so far behind the times. It's 25 years behind the times from a political standpoint. It's way behind. I would say it's good, but I'm never a fan of constitutional amendments in non-presidential years, just from a turnout standpoint. If you go back and look at Florida, just go look at 2014. We missed by 1.8%, came back in a presidential and got 72 when Trump carried Florida at 16. Same amendment, same medical amendment. So it all just comes down to turnout. Rick Scott's leaving. Not Rick Scott. Ron DeSantis is leaving. He's obviously a very wildly popular, talked about governor. Not very popular in my household, given how much I've supported him, and he spent $50 million of taxpayer money killing Amendment 3. But I won't go much more into that, but
It's wild.
I think it's good to have it out there. I'm not getting too riled up as we operate our business. November 5th was determinative of us of kind of what the flight path was in the short and medium term.
Yeah.
And we've adjusted accordingly. We didn't really spend any money getting ready for it. And the mandate, we know how to win in a medical market. It's still the biggest medical market in the world, and we're going to go win. I'm not getting caught up in whether we're going to get it or not. I'm much more focused on hemp legislation, which I think that's going to pop back up. We're going to see that.
You do.
It's 100%. I would be betting. I'm a betting man. I'm long hemp bill coming back up.
How have any of the dynamics in your business, not in your business, in the market changed after November 5th? Have you seen anything change in any of your competitors' behavior, pricing in the market, the way the consumers are acting? Has there anything that's fundamentally changed within the Florida market in a post Amendment 3 failing world?
So yeah, I'll give you the good news first. As anticipated, I think I said it on this pod before
Price compression
before the election, was that you'd see if it didn't pass, you'd see new patients come back. New patients went basically completely flat from Q3 onwards. Started Q3 onwards. And you've seen it bounce back in a real way. I think it was up 1.8%. It was only 3% all year in 2024 new patient growth. And just since the failed Amendment 3 vote, you've seen it go up like 1.8%.
Yeah.
So we just crossed 900,000 patients as of last week for the first time. That number's never been crossed. So that's a positive. Now we got more people being added to the pool on a regular basis. It's kind of like that same add-on rate on a weekly basis that we were seeing during COVID, when everyone was stuck at home and wanted to get stoned to deal with life. So that's a net positive. What we're also seeing in the market is also price compression like crazy. Curaleaf was on somewhere between 40 and 70% off for basically October onwards, and it continues. I know all the True Leaf, same thing. There's daily deals. They're all having to fight because you got 86 stores were open from January to December.
Yeah.
New stores ahead in the ramp up to Amendment 3.
Yep.
Probably close to 2.5 to 3 million square feet of cultivation canopy brought online because everyone thought there was this huge scale up moment.
Yeah.
And then it didn't happen. So that you got a lot of, and most of that canopy add-on is indoor, which is the most expensive to build out, highest cog, hits your margin the hardest. So you got a lot of product that's in an oversupply. Most of it's that lower end product though. Anthony, I know you and I are more of the head shoppers where we're looking for good stuff. You still, if you want good stuff, you're at Flowery, you're at Jungle Boys, you're at Sunburn. We've actually raised price to guard inventory, and we've been able to do it and still increase revenue. So been happy with that. But you're seeing price compression on like the lower tier items, the smalls, the ground, the distillate. And I don't see that stopping anytime soon.
So what do you
also got to look at? It's a tough time to gauge that though, guys, to be completely fair to the overall marketplace, because traditionally in vice industries, alcohol is the closest one we can look at. Everyone blows it out between Thanksgiving and New Year's, and then some variation of dry January, and/or they're paying off the credit card, so they're not traveling, they're not partying, they're not having fun. So usually you see in CPG, especially alcohol, those first 2 months of the year, especially with February being down 2 days, you usually see softer results, and then you see the year kind of slowly pick up in March.
Yeah.
So it's not too fair to gauge it, but post Amendment 3, the prices, and there's a middle tier of players here in Florida that are in trouble.
Yeah. So when it comes, I was going to ask, like, how do you see this playing out? Like, if you see prices being discounted 40, 50, 60%, you can't sustain that for a long period of time. But when it comes to consolidation, does it happen? If so, how quickly?
I don't see. I mean, with capital markets in the state that they're in, barring something crazy from happening, and I'm not rooting against us, I'd be shocked to see a lot of M&A outside of, that Vireo deal that went down, which I don't really. That's kind of a uninvestable deal for me.
Yeah.
As I looked at it, so I don't know. I don't think you're going to see. I think there's probably a desire to do some M&A from a lot of players in Florida that are looking for a bigger, stable, more stable partner. But I don't think there's capital around being able to do it. It's tough. It's tough going down here right now.
Yeah.
How's hemp affecting the business? Is hemp still affecting your business? Are you seeing a growth of it? Are you getting any feedback from consumers that are, let's say, going to those products at all?
you see we see people try them a lot, and they end up in the medical dispensaries because you're just not getting the consistency, quality, and or experience. With hemp, it's kind of a first time buy. Hey, I don't need a med card, and then it's like, what did I just buy? But it's definitely affecting it. I mean, you're talking about 9,600 smoke shops with signs that say no med card needed, that don't have any advertising restrictions, don't have any kind of location restrictions. You can be next to a church. I mean, there's one I went to, I posted on Twitter, that was inside an ice cream parlor in downtown West Palm Beach next to a kids park. So, it's definitely having an impact on the marketplace. It's, I remember being in a part of the Farm Bill in 18 and screaming up and down that if you guys don't include THCA and get more clear around what is actually industrial hemp that you're trying to legalize, then you're going to open a massive loophole, and they did. But if you were to ask me, that was on purpose. Tobacco guys needed a new way to get in a new vertical, and they got it.
They got it. Love that hat, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.
Need to be the official swag partner of TDR, where we go on location and film at your dispensaries. What do you think?
Anytime. You guys are always welcome. You know that.
Anything else you want to touch on regarding Florida? Good.
I think Brady's answered everything that we were talking
Try
about.
our flower. It's getting really good.
Yeah, we all see the OMU numbers. I know that you guys have rationalized SKUs recently, which is nice to see. I mean, there's a lot of those top strains that you guys have that are consistently stocked, and I mean, I'm just looking forward to seeing what 2025 brings for the entire Florida market. Do you think those licenses are going to come online anytime soon, or you think those are going to be just locked up for a while?
I think they're going to be, the litigation locks them up for a period of time, and then I think capital markets will have its impact. I think there's some well-financed ones. I mean, obviously Stizzy got one. I think they'll eventually come to market. Some of them are going to come to market, but they're all those. There's a lot of investment decks flying around. There's a lot of sale decks flying around right now. Hey, Jeff, come buy my license.
I'm curious to see if Stizzy can come down here and compete. I think they can compete on price. I don't know if Stizzy's going to be able to come down here and win consumers from the medical market. Man.
It's tough, especially when you're starting this far behind the eight ball.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, you got, Connected and Alien at True Leave. You got us. You got all the Cali brands. They got a head start at Flowery, and then you got obviously Jungle Boys, another preeminent Cali brand. Like, you're coming into a very crowded field trying to find a little runway to run. It's going to be hard.
I feel like there's a reason that and I watch Jungle Boys very closely. I feel like there's a reason Jungle Boys have slowly grown in Florida, very slowly, just strategically placing retail, keeping the price high, keeping the product premium, and just, I guess, growing as they can. Versus just dispensary, and blowing things out at the value level.
Well, good update on Florida. Next podcast, we need to do an after dark one where you can share stories. Weren't your neighbors with Jimmy Buffett growing up as a kid?
I went to kindergarten with his daughter at Key West Elementary.
I'm sure you got a few stories.
Son of a sailor. We should go shoot down in Key West one time.
I would love that.
Give you guys a local store.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
I've been to that store on down in Key West. It's a good location.
Right across from Sloppy Joe's. You can't get off the cruise ship and get to Sloppy Joe's for a beer or Rick's without walking by us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. I think it is actually just about here at Eastern time. But listen, thanks for the check-in. Great to get your feedback and an update on Florida. Let's keep in touch, okay, my friend?
See you guys soon. Cheers.
All right.
Thanks sir. Talk soon.
You guys know Florida inside and out, but interesting what he's predicting with regards to how this Florida market is going to be up for some.
I mean, you can go on Curaleaf, Trulieve, Verano. You can go on everybody's website and see what the current pricing is in Florida.
Yeah.
Anyone can.
Yeah.
It's not a ghost. I go on all those websites weekly, just to see what deals are going on, what the average price of an eighth is, what they're coming out with. Like Curaleaf, actually. It's interesting that strategically Curaleaf have now chose to launch a premium brand in the state of Florida. Under the Reef banner, and their premium is priced below everyone else's premium. They came out at $45 an eighth. If you go to Sunburn, I think their eighths, the premium eighths are $50. If you go to Flowery, premium eighths are $60. Kim's with the Alien Labs and the Connected lines, her eighths vary, I think, from 48 to 60, depending on strain. So Boris is pricing his premium offering below market. I'm assuming to get customers in the door.
Yeah, well, Do something and do it really well. People will come regardless of the circumstances, right?
Yeah.
But that's the audience you
Yeah, I
want to
mean,
go after.
that's what I said about Flowery. I mean, Flowery was nuts. I was in there and everyone's basket price was 600, 800, 1,000. And it was busy at 3:00 on a Sunday.
Hmm.
And
Well-
the location was in a warehouse district, like right off the highway, that you had to come off the highway, go like all the way around, and it wasn't very easily accessible. It was packed.
Well, this is I love you Southern Florida guys, as we had Brady Cobb on and yourself in Fort Lauderdale, and keeping on that narrative. Let's welcome in our next Southern Florida resident guest here today, Mr. Matthew Wiz Buckley, former Top Gun fighter pilot and an options trader now of Top Gun Options, correct?
You got it, my brother.
What's going on? Good to see you. Welcome back.
I am living the dream, my friend. Couldn't be better. You got to get down here to the free Republic of Florida. What are you waiting for?
We always talk about this all the time.
Yeah,
That's
man.
true.
Hey, it's underway. It is.
Okay.
I've applied and everything's heading in the right direction. We just got to be patient and get some sort of reform before we actually go and present everything. Until then, need to have some people within government officials to look at this differently, because I don't want to go all the way to the 11th hour and have this just fall in front of my face. But hopefully we're neighbors and we're doing these podcasts on the beach in the next year or so.
I'll believe it when Anthony and I get a text like, hey, can you guys help me move my couches in? I'll give you a free pizza.
Free pizza. Would that do it?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
Listen, lots to talk about. I think off the top, before we get into a couple things regarding some of the stories I really wanted to bring you on, Anthony and I, along with Brady before you came on, touched on RFK. One big step in the right direction from yesterday's Senate committee hearing. Now it's going to go to a floor vote, and that'll happen probably in the next day or two, depending on how much the Dems want to delay this. But, you know, we've heard RFK talk in the past about psychedelics and really pulling that, you know, veteran access angle and really looking at this. And, you know, he kind of questions the current big pharma landscape. What do you think this appointment would mean for, I don't want to talk about the industry, but for you being a veteran and a lot of, you know, your friends that are veterans as well?
It's earth shattering for the veteran community. I mean, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I was a single issue voter for the last election. I'm like, I'm going to vote for the guy or the gal who is pro psychedelics for veterans. It was RFK. I can't believe I probably don't agree with that guy on 70% of the things, but the things I do agree with him on are life-saving and changing. So I can put the partisan stuff aside. So when he, you know, bowed out and supported Donald, man, I'm like, let's go. Here we go.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, you know, Republicans got RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard. The Democrats got Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, the crying Air National Guard pilot. So that's the best trade, options trade I've seen in a while. But RFK Jr. is groundbreaking. I know you guys have seen the clip, but for all our viewers right now, Google like RFK psychedelics.
Yes.
And hopefully the clip comes up of 3 minutes ish of him saying, hey, I was a heroin addict.
Yeah.
I was an alcoholic. So when I heard psychedelics, I'm like, you people are just trading one bad for another. And then sadly, his wife checked out on her own in 2012. And he says, I lost my son. One of my sons was just done. He went to Peru. He sat with the medicine. He came home. I got my son back. So I went from could not disagree with this more to could not agree more. So I got SEAL buddies. I have a lot of folks that have, I didn't get a chance when he was in South Florida to meet him at a scheduling conflict, but a lot of veterans were supporting RFK Jr. And this guy, you know, lead follower, get out of the way. If he doesn't, I'll pick up a flamethrower and go after him too. But let's get him in the front door and poking around. I mean, if it's within an hour, things are changing in DC. It's absolutely insane. So if things are moving at the speed they're moving, we should see something soon.
Well, Anthony,
how much more? Or go ahead, Chad.
You and I, Anthony, have talked about when we were in Washington that in order for any kind of reform, whether it's cannabis or psychedelics, this has got to hit home to a lot of these senators. And when you bring up the RFK thing, there's no better example than just that, right?
Well, and you know, I love seeing the memes of like Elizabeth Warren all NASCAR'd up like Ricky Bobby. I wish they could wear who donates the most to
They're
him,
lo-
because she'd have
Yeah.
Pfizer and all sorts of stuff, right? So he's facing an uphill climb. I've shared with you guys, I think in the past, in one of my trips to DC behind closed doors, I gotta love what you're doing, Wiz, but you're gonna have a problem with the big pharma folks and the alcohol and tobacco lobby. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm gonna have a problem with that? Ain't that your job, Chief?
Yeah.
So he's gonna face a lot of challenges, and we are living in bizarro world, man, because when I went to DC, I thought the Democrats were already there, man.
No,
Drug rugs, mala beads, peace, anti-war, don't trust the government. The parties have completely
flopped.
They are pro-war, they are pro-government, they are pro-big pharma. Take that jab, and if you don't, we're going to end your career type of bullshit. So we are in bizarro, uncharted territory, man. So nothing's going to surprise me.
Yeah.
How close do you think we are to seeing psychedelics, let's say, accepted as therapies? And do you think it's going to take a lot more effort to, let's say, get us over the line, even though someone like RFK is now in the HHS and fully understands what this can do, especially at a veteran level?
It's a great question, bro. This is a we the people moment. This is not a them. This isn't going to come from them down. It's coming from us up. When I do talk to Republicans who are, I'd volunteer to throw the electric chair switch on death row. I hate drugs and criminals. When I give them a 5 to 10 minute brief about what happened to me, they flip. Hell, we got more Congressman Morgan Luttrell. All the Republican veteran congressmen are pro psychedelics. So once you give them this is a shaking hands and kissing babies movement. You gotta get eyeball to eyeball with somebody and say, these aren't drugs, these are medicine. I got my ass kicked for 12 to 14 hours. You're not taking ibogaine and going out to live in Miami. You're not going anywhere, for a weekend. So once you dig in and you really talk to people, we're good to go. But God, thank God, it is pretty smart. The first psychedelic revolution was Democrats, drug rugs, mala beads, Timothy O'Leary, let's put it in the water. Well, that kind of freaks some people out. This psychedelic revolution is being led by other people too, but a Marcus Luttrell, a Wiz, hell, you guys, you probably saw on Joe Rogan, Governor Perry. The guy's like, 5 years ago, if I saw me running for president, advocate for psychedelics, I kicked my own ass. So we're getting there. And man, as you guys know, I have a little microdosing product, 100% legal for now. It's, when you see the Wall Street Journal, like moms in microdosing or microdosing in the boardroom, or half the tech developments in Silicon Valley came because of psychedelics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long answer to your short question, Anthony. We, the people, are starting to wake up to it. They're on to alcohol sucks. They're on to getting healthier. All his other Make America Healthier, great stuff, go perfect with the mind and soul wellness as well too.
Yeah.
And when you were in Washington educating these lawmakers on psychedelics, especially as it relates to veterans, did they understand fundamentally that veterans are being forced to go abroad to seek these therapies after they literally risk their lives to keep our asses safe here? That they have to then go to Mexico, Peru, Costa Rica to seek out these therapies. They can't get them or any semblance of them at home.
It would infuriate me getting on an airplane to go to Mexico and Costa Rica. But thank you to the great voters in the states of Oregon and Colorado. We're now doing our retreats at home. But Anthony, you're right, man. When I hit them between the eyes with, I'm having to go to another country to heal guys and gals who incurred trauma serving this one. What are you doing? And then that really causes their head to tilt sideways, because it's just a disgrace. The 60-minute segment the other night was awesome. I love my brother Jesse at the Heroic Hearts Project. It was a good segment on 60 Minutes, but the head VA doctor did say that. He's like, we're clearly failing at the VA. If these guys and gals are having to go to another country to seek healing, they're hitting the roof of what we're doing for them, and that's just simply unacceptable. So we need more data. But I'll be honest with you, fellas, 2 months ago, the VA announced with great fanfare, we are funding a study in the psychedelics, the first one since the 60s. And half of me went, yay. And then I looked at it and I wanted to retch. It's $1.5 million over 5 years.
What are you doing with that?
Federal government
So
spends
yeah.
That's 15 seconds of federal funding. I saw today Politico got $8 million from our federal government for their bullshit reporting. You know what I could do with $8 million? I would clear the list of the No Fallen Heroes Foundation. All of everybody seeking treatment would be cured. So I'll put my tinfoil hat on. I think that was just a little bit of a, hey, veteran community, look,
It's a headline.
Something.
It's
Exactly.
another bullshit. It's another bullshit headline.
You could find $1.5 million in the couch, in the VA's
Correct.
couch. So don't give me any of this, like, we're looking into it. How many, what's that, 5 times? That's 40,000 veterans potentially taking their own lives during the life of the so-called study. If I was the head of the VA, the guy that just got appointed, I've been tweeting at him madly, like, hey, man, put your boots on, go to Mexico. Go hold space at a retreat in Costa Rica. Get out of your cubicle, man, and stop listening to this crowd. Come to a No Fallen Heroes Foundation retreat. Get on an airplane and get out of DC.
When we talk about some of these trade wars going on right now, and the root cause being more of a drug war versus a trade war, there's how many deaths are there per day in the U.S. right now of fentanyl? Isn't it something staggering, like 75,000?
It's like 100,000 a year or something, isn't there?
Or maybe not a day. What am I talking about?
I think it's a year, 100.
Which is more than the Vietnam War, right? Which is
yes.
But keeping on the topic of the VA, there was a big article actually from Thom over at Marijuana Moment 2 days ago, where a former top official of the VA said that he believes the Trump administration is going to take a pretty bold stance on psychedelic medicine for military veterans, later adding that legal access to the substances could be available in the next year or two once a lot of these trials are done. Have you or any of your close network had conversations with RFK?
Oh, yeah. What's his name? Tony. His Instagram handle is Flow State Frogman.
Okay.
Navy SEAL. So a bunch of my buddies have either donated to his campaign. Some of them were working on his campaign. So they're very close to him. And it sounds like these are one of this will be one of the first things when he gets in the door to start moving pretty quick with. So let me put my Top Gun Options hat on real quick.
Yeah.
A tie. Have you seen a tie in the past 3 days?
What's it moved?
50%.
Yeah.
A tie was up 50% in the past 3 days. MindMed, MNMD, is up about 25% in the past couple of days. The psychedelic stuff, Cybin, is getting ready for a rip. All of these names are in phase 2-ish, phase 3-ish, with results you just can't believe, right? 85%.
Did you look at GHR? Did you look at GHRS's endpoints that they had? They had an endpoint. Their phase 2 endpoints came out on Monday. The stock was up about 100% when the market opened.
Yep, I did see that. Yep, I don't follow that one, but I did after I saw that pop.
Yeah, it was a pop. It was in relation to TRD, which is great. That's something that they need to figure out.
I would buy these names.
DMT. Yeah.
Yep, I would buy these names with both hands, man. This sector is set to explode, and I'm torn, right? As an investor, I love this as whiz. I hate it, right? If you're the CEO of Eli Lilly, Pfizer, or Johnson & Johnson, you're not sitting on the 12th floor of your headquarters counting your cash, smoking a cigar, reading the Wall Street Journal, going, this little psychedelic company is going to cure generalized anxiety disorder with a single treatment. They will swoop in and scoop all these companies up with their size 12 checkbook. They will do that, and they might just put this stuff on the shelf.
They shelf it. Yeah. They buy and shelf. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Let me remind people, if that made you, fall out of your chair, healing's free, man. Whatever word you choose to use, I use the word God. Somebody put these things on our planet for us to heal, not a dude in a lab coat with a beaker focused on profit. So even if they do that, you can heal, folks. Trust me.
We were at a low point a couple months back. Let's say when the Lyco stuff happened, there was turmoil. Do you think that the RFK getting put into HHS, the conversation around psychedelics, the states' rights movements that we're seeing right now, do you think we've reached that inflection point to where we're kind of out of that? And I don't want to say in the clear, but the momentum is barreling forward.
Yeah, man. So I'm going to use an Apollo 13 NASA term: successful failure, right? That mission failed. 3 dudes got home safe. So the Lycos to me was a successful failure.
Yep.
All the mind meds, the Cybins, the Atais went, look at that shit show. Okay, we're not doing that. You know, I remember the MM120, the mind med CEO came out and said, and he kind of led the announcement with like, and by the way, these incredible results come with zero psychotherapy.
Yeah.
It was a not too veiled poke at, you know, Rick and Maps and or Lycos and stuff like that. So it was a low point, Anthony, but you nailed it, man. I can't be any more bullish. You got JD Vance on Rogan 4 months ago. He didn't even, Rogan gave him a brief.
For sure he did.
This guy's a Marine veteran. He gave like a 10-minute brief on psychedelics. He's like, why aren't we doing this? I'm like,
I know.
Thank you. And then
what I liked is that he wasn't opinionated by it all. He listened to what Rogan had to say, and he was there to learn, which was great. It surprised me a little knowing his mother's battled addiction. But regardless, the fact is that Joe brought it up and educated him a little bit. And let's hope RFK continues to push that narrative forward.
Pete Hegseth was on the Sean Ryan podcast, and Sean Ryan, Ibogaine, Toad, completely different human being. And Pete Hegseth's like, I've never done that, but all my bros are saying this has saved their life. Why aren't we doing this? So we have 2 elected or 1 appointed, 1 elected official, and RFK hopefully knocking on wood. So I've never been more bullish. So Anthony's right. We were that was a dark night of the soul with MDMA, but we got that was a constructive ass kicking.
They got lit up. They got lit up at that hearing. I was just watching it and I was like, oh my God. Yeah. I was like, this is not
they landed appropriate punches, which were the 3 of us could have landed those same punches, but some of their ties to pharmas, as you look in their kitchen, there was a lot of roaches.
It looked premeditated, but they lit them up at that hearing. But I do think that we're out of it. We did come out of it for the better, because it did put all the but all the other companies on notice as to what they needed to do and how they needed to stress test their current methodologies.
If we get cannabis rescheduling, and then we get the support for further research from an announcement from RFK, I think what you're going to see is some of these companies get bought out right away. I really believe that. Like, this isn't going to be.
But the veterans also need to be getting these therapies. Like, I'm a little bit too open here, but anyone that's willing to go risk their life abroad to this country, if they come home and they request something, I would be obliged to give them that request.
Amen.
Especially if it's a medicine or something to the nature of a psychedelic substance that they're requesting, because they currently have trauma from what they did to protect this country. That to me is unfathomable.
I can't believe we
shit
had
that happens in the VA.
Yeah, I can't believe we had, what was it called? The Right to Try Act? Who the hell are you telling me I have a right to try something when I'm on death's door or suicidal?
Correct.
Benjamin, go get the musket. You can't tell me what to do, man.
No.
So and you can only do it if you're almost suicidal or almost done. We love Tom Cruise movie Minority Report. You remember the Department of Pre-Crime? You know, they would arrest people before they commit. We need the Department of Pre-Suicide. And that's what these medicines can be. We got to stop guys and gals from checking out before it's too late. So,
well, SSRIs were brought into the scene 40 years ago. They were fine, but that's 40 years ago.
You think what happens if you take our SSRIs for 40 years?
Oh my
brain
God,
becomes a block of Swiss cheese.
That's exactly right. It's awful. We're going to look back. You know, maybe my kids' generation will look back at some of the stuff and go, "Oh my God, what were we doing?"
Of course they will.
That was so bad, that what they were doing to people. And here we are now.
But again, it's a pill a day. So a pill a day equals a lot
recurring
of
revenue. That's exactly right. There ain't no money in healing.
Think about this.
It's why I've said, I mean, Big Pharma has changed. I'll admit that Big Pharma has changed civilization for the better in certain respects, but but they've also done some nasty shit in terms of medicine.
Think about the current model. Kid wakes up, has sugar everywhere in their breakfast, goes to school, crashes mid-morning. Lunchtime, give me that sugar rush again. And then basically at home after school, that happens year over year. Suddenly they become teenagers. They're online, they're looking at an iPad, unmotivated. Here's a medication because you have anxiety, you're depressed. Like, stop.
Won't be happening in my house, I can tell you.
No. Exactly.
No. Thank God for, like, you know, and Shad, you're right, because screen addiction and stuff like that. Ibogaine is a global thermonuclear bomb to your system to reset you to before all of that stuff impacted you. It literally is a gift from God. You guys know Deborah Mash, the
No.
queen of Ibogaine?
No.
She's got a company called Demorex, and she's working on neuroibogaine. So, either get your ass kicked and then it turns into this part of the brief for alcohol use disorder. Could you imagine a single use Ibogaine and you're not on your back for 12 to 14 hours getting your ass kicked like I was, but single doses of this that destroys alcohol, man. You guys know my story.
That's key.
Up to a year after a single Ibogaine treatment, if I smelled alcohol, it made me physically ill. I dry heave. It was repugnant to me. So this is a game changer. Now you know why the Coors and the Bush family or whatever ain't too happy. People are getting healthier anyway and starting to do less and less drinking. But if you get something like a neuroibogaine or ibogaine and it just destroys alcohol, holy crap, man! Now we got people living longer lives, healthier lives.
Poison. I mean, alcohol is literally poison. You're frying your brain.
How many people are dead or in jail from domestic disturbances where people were drunk or bar fights? A drunk driver killed my 19-year-old sister, man. If we could wipe out alcohol, addiction in this country. Now, I ain't sitting here with flowing robes, man. I can have a glass of wine with my pasta or my steak now, but old whiz, a glass of wine was the bottle or probably 2 to 3. Now I can have a glass of wine and not be the guy that I was. And I actually look at that as a win. I'm like, aha, I had a glass of wine and I don't want anything else. So it's almost a good thing,
Amen to that.
Yeah. So as far as the future goes, I'm assuming you're expecting, I don't want to say big things because let's not get our expectations, I guess, too much. Yeah. But you think like we're the tide shifted as it relates to psychedelics and access.
Tsunami
and the therapies.
Really, it's been a tsunami, man. We're doing healing retreats here in Florida under the religious, spiritual center type of thing. We're doing retreats in Oklahoma. We're doing retreats in Texas. So not just Colorado and Oregon. I mean, it's here. It's just whether or not the government wakes up and acknowledges it's here, and we the people. But man, when I'm not ashamed to say I go to yoga and get my downward dog on. When I have moms coming to me afterwards, like, "Hey, you run this microdosing thing, or you do healing retreats?" It's in the zeitgeist, folks. It's
I was at a very nice wedding in Sonoma in February, and in the gift bags, everybody got in the reception bags, everybody got mushroom chocolate bars.
I love it
in the bags. No one was drinking at the wedding. I'll leave it at that.
That's fantastic. That's great news.
I think ideally, and I'll flat out say it, for a guy that hasn't drank in 18 years, it's more
well done, bro.
It's more than just the taste and smell of alcohol. It's the emotional level and how you perceive life. And this is why the research is happening. And hopefully, if somebody's on their doorstep, like, not knowing if they want to live anymore, I wish them nothing but the best. I've seen many friends when it comes to addiction over the last 18 years, including a close friend of mine that died over this past weekend. I feel awful for his brother and his family, but we need of course we obviously need this research, but the big thing for us is why I wanted to have you on is that we're actually potentially going to see some change with this RFK appointment, which leaves me feeling optimistic. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys watched it and probably read the book too, but How to Change Your Mind, right? Like Michael Pollan said, they discovered penicillin in the 1920s. It saved millions of GIs' lives in World War II.
Yeah.
They figured out how penicillin works in the 1960s. I'm taking the same approach to psychedelics, right? Because like Dr. Mash, she's like, Wiz, I love all these anecdotal stories. You and all your vets and everybody like that, but they're anecdotal stories. I'm a scientist in a lab coat and a beaker. So it's that bridge we talk about. You got all the anecdotal stories that saved and changed my life. And then you got the booger eaters with the beakers and the slide rules coming up with the Excel sheets to prove it. We don't have to wait, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to wait until that bridge meets. And I'll be honest with you guys, I don't think that bridge is going to meet because I think God's right there in the middle. Like, you can keep doing all the studies you want, VA and people in lab coats. I'm the guy sitting around a fire in Colorado holding space. I try to go on every retreat that I can, but if I miss one, every one I've missed, I've gotten a text that says, "Thanks, bro. I don't want to kill myself anymore."
Yeah.
You can't put a price tag. You can't. Every one of those makes me
No.
tear up. I screenshot it and I put it in a folder. Whenever I'm having a shitty day, I go look in that folder and it makes me smile. So we can wait for the data. I won't because it's working.
Had a couple of people reach out, mention Compass Pathways too. That was the
CMPS.
darling of it's gone through a little bit of turmoil in the last little bit. I know with some of their research that was taking place, but
I like Atai, MindMed, and Cybin.
Yeah, but here's the thing: I'd be curious to see if there's going to be a lot more money raised within this industry and new companies come to market, because we all know the first run, there's a lot of mistakes that happen, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Some of these therapies are getting close. If some of these therapies get product market fit and go into commercialization, you're not going to see a second cohort of companies come with the same thing.
Correct.
It'd be redundant. Those ones, the first ones to market that get commercialization and go through everything will be the ones that are servicing patients.
I got accused from one of our viewers earlier about stealing some information from Patrick Bet-David's podcast. I watch it a lot. I love the podcast. You got me when it came to the amount of deaths in the Vietnam War. But you were actually at an event. Was it election night that you were with him down in Florida? How was that? What's he like?
Yeah, that was cool, man. That was awesome. I got to be honest, man. I was wrong. Susie and I left early. I'm like, it's 2020 copy and paste. It's going to look like he's winning, and then we're going to wake up tomorrow, and over the coming days, he's going to have lost. Let's go to bed. I was wrong, clearly. But the event, they were all fired up and having a blast. I'm like, I'm not gonna do this to myself again.
What a podcast he's built.
He's a good dude.
I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, checked my phone, and looked at the numbers, and I had to keep looking at it. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, there's no way this is what happened. And then I turn on the TV and it's like, yeah, this is literally, he just slammed the popular vote.
I still thought it was a joke, man, because I woke up to a million texts because everybody's like, you laughed, you moron. Hey, Shad, before I forget, I put it in our private chat.
Okay.
But Psychedelic Alpha has it's called the Psychedelic Drug Development Bullseye. So if you pull it up, the names that are closer to the bullseye are ones that are closer to approval. And if each pie is broken up like into 5-MeO-DMT, ibogaine, psilocybin, it's worth its weight in gold for investors. So click, maybe share that out to folks or email it out. That's my radar scope for psychedelics, bro. If you click on it, it enlarges.
I just clicked on it. How do I share that on here? What I'm going to do, everyone, is after this is done, I'm going to copy and paste this link and put it in the comment section.
Oh, yeah.
Give you an idea. We can do that sort of thing. Last thing I wanted to bring up as well, completely outside of psychedelics. I saw you on Megyn Kelly's podcast last week, along with Fox News. Tragic, obviously, what happened in Washington between the American airline and the Black Hawk helicopter. Oh, there you go, Wiz.
Look at that. Perfect. Yeah.
Awesome. Tragic. I don't want to get too much into it, but tragic situation there that happened. But what do you think went wrong in that situation?
Shad, I've lost 16 brothers in aviation mishaps. Every one of those mishaps, you go backwards and everything is a link in a chain. You pull one of those links out, the mishap doesn't happen. They were on the wrong route, man. On the Route 4, it's called. They're supposed to hug the eastern shore of the Potomac. Stay over there. They hit the RJ like in the middle of the Potomac. So strike one is they were not on the right course. Strike two is they were off altitude. That Route 4 says hug the shoreline, stay below 200 feet, period. The RJ with the most recent radar hits was 325 feet plus or minus 25 feet. So they're strike two. Off course, off altitude. Strike three, and I feel horrible for this guy. I'm not going to say DEI, not DEI. I think things will come out, but this guy's got to be feeling horrific. The controller. So the controller said, Pat 25, you have RJ traffic, call them in sight. Yeah, Pat 25, traffic in sight. The controller says, all right, go behind them. Soon as the controller heard the crew say traffic in sight, He just put a mental check mark in his brain that said, all right, he sees them. Let me go do other stuff since I'm doing the job of 2 people right now, and let me get busy. But fellas, I didn't go to air traffic control school, but I guarantee you on day 1, lesson 1, it says if 2 targets on your scope are going at each other at the same altitude.
Yeah.
Even if one guy said, yeah, I got that traffic in sight, give them a follow-up call. Pat 25, confirm you have RJ traffic left 11, half a mile, co-altitude. Acknowledge. The crew in the front of that helo would have went, oh shit, because they clearly had a different RJ or airliner in sight, especially if they were on night vision.
And
That's
I'm assuming
third strike.
I'm assuming this situation that you're explaining from the controller's perspective, the pilot's perspective, this is all happening at very high rates of speed. So
this happened in a matter of seconds, man. You're exactly right. Call that traffic in sight, traffic in sight. All right, over here, RJ's rolling on final. And the guys in the RJ, man, they're a couple hundred feet from landing. They got their gear down, their flaps down. They did their landing checklist. They're looking at the landing environment. They're in their cockpit, man. Yeah. But they said, the NTSB just said at the last second on the tapes, you hear an audible gasp, and they pulled back on the yoke. They saw him at the last second and tried to pull up. So that's another hit on the controller. The controller, and he's on 2 different frequencies, right? The Army is up a UHF freak, and the civilians are on VHF. So he should have, again, in hindsight, that's why I feel so bad for this guy, is because he should have said,
how long is shifts do these guys work?
It might be 8 type of thing or 12 hours. They were understaffed, and they were, and 2 things can be true at the same time. DEI did or didn't have anything to do with this. I don't care. DEI absolutely has to do with their staffing shortage. Google 2015 Obama FAA lawsuit. I know personally white male air traffic control veterans. These guys were working on the aircraft carrier control, the overqualified. 3 years, never got a call from the FAA. Overqualified white males who never got called because of Obama. And there's a huge lawsuit. He literally threw out all the apps and started with some, what's your favorite color type of bullshit entrance interview. Oh yeah, Google it, dude. It's gross. So
great.
Might not have had a direct impact on this, but we can, even if it doesn't, this mishap highlights what? Aviation is a self-cleaning oven. You absolutely have to have the elite, because if something like this could happen even with the best of the best,
of course,
you don't want the not the best of the best, man. It's awful. You know, day 1 of flight school in Pensacola, Florida, as a naval aviator, I remember a crusty instructor telling me, Wiz, everybody is trying to kill you. Sometimes even you. So keep your head on a swivel. So it is an unforgiving environment, you know, and people are like, the helos should have been flying in that area. Hey, man, if everybody was doing their job, the mishap doesn't happen. But now we have a knee-jerk reaction like after 9/11. Oh, we need a TSA. No, we didn't. But now they're knee-jerk. No helos in here. And I'm like, okay, let's. Yeah. I guarantee you, fellas, and you can have me back on to discuss this. This is going to be one of those mishaps, sadly, where the conclusion is, had we followed established procedures, this doesn't happen. This isn't some cosmic, we need new regulations and new gee whiz bang technology. Day 1 of flight school, also, I was told, don't hit anything, either on the air or attached to the ground. And that obviously didn't happen.
Well, thoughts and prayers, everyone out there. Tragic ending.
Yeah.
I've taken that flight a number of times, flying into Reagan, DCA. But anyway, listen, great information. I hope this gets the access, most importantly for veterans, but curious to see how this industry does perform. We are a business finance podcast, so watching this closely as things start to develop. But listen, appreciate it. Tell the family that we say hi.
You bet, fellas.
Go Colorado Buffaloes.
And go Cats. We got to get you down here so you can be a Panthers fan, man.
Yeah. I did go to a game over Christmas, and
I saw that.
God damn, man. It was colder in that rink than it was in Canada.
You came down during our cold snap, man.
Oh my. Well, the weather was warm, but I'm saying in that arena, they were pumping the air. I had to go out and spend about $600 on jackets and sweaters. Whoever's controlling.
Get out of here.
Oh, I'm serious. I had to get my kid a jersey. I'm like, oh, I'll get one too. Then my wife wants a couple of hoodies. And next thing you know, I'm out $600. And I haven't sat down yet.
Shad, you're a businessman. Of course, the CEO is saying, "Hey, pump up the AC," so all these guys got to
I
go
do the
buy
same thing.
jerseys.
Oh, that's hilarious. Anyways, keep in touch. Okay,
All right, fellas.
Thanks,
God
guys.
bless.
Talk soon.
Thanks for having me.
See ya.
Good guy to say the least. What a show
Yeah.
here today. Action packed. Before I want to let you run, I thought it was funny when Aaron Klein brought up the example of Shohei Ohtani. How he got to keep his account open despite somebody fraudulently impersonating him and wiring $17 million into the account of a bookie when referring to just a lot of the stuff that's going on with banking and suspicious banking activities. But I thought that was a hell of an example.
I mean, I think it just shows the circus of America if you're rich.
Isn't it?
I mean, people talk about mortgage rates all the time. Rich people don't pay those mortgage rates. They have relationships with banks, with JP Morgan, Goldman, their private client, private wealth resources. They're getting money from the bank at much lower rates.
What do you think they pay for, like,
it's
Rolls Royce?
I don't want to. It's not even that. I'm just talking like access to money.
I hear you.
It's different when you're rich. Banks treat you different.
Yeah.
Tim Seymour will be on at 11 a.m. on Friday.
Yep.
But yeah, if you want to talk about the banking, I think Mr. Gannon alluded to the fact that from an overdraft perspective, you can give the bank your paycheck on Friday. You've got a bunch of bills that don't go out until Tuesday. Meanwhile, they keep hitting you. Batch those as to what will actually draw the largest overdraft fees, and then just keep taking your money.
That's wild.
The banking industry is criminal as it relates to overdraft fees, as it relates to what they charge, et cetera. But that's a completely different story.
Yeah. All right. Yes, as you said, 11 a.m. Friday morning, Tim Seymour from CNBC's Fast Money and from CNBS Cannabis ETF will be joining us. Want to talk about how he's prepping and preparing, what he thinks, obviously, of this banking hearing, and as well, how he's kind of viewing the cannabis space moving forward here in 2025. But one of the most respected financiers, I should say, in the overall industry. He will be on. Obviously, he's been on the show and is on the show CNBC and every single day at 4. Is it 4 o'clock? I think he's on with CNBC, but he's been on a few times before.
5.
Five.
Fast Money's 5 o'clock.
Yeah. So if there's any
closing bell, then Fast Money's 5 o'clock.
And a big New York Mets fan and Rangers fan. But any questions that you guys want us to ask him, please leave it in the comment section below. As usual, we're going to have a quick takeaway from the latest earnings regarding Aurora. But all it did, what was it up? How much today?
Closed up 45%, and it looks like it's up 6 or 7% after hours.
Interesting.
It's a short squeeze.
Yeah. Wow. Good time to be a Aurora shareholder. But we will quickly top line our takeaways from their latest earnings in tomorrow morning's Baked In newsletter. So if you haven't gotten a chance, make sure to scan that QR code here on the right side of our template of the show. Okay, we're an hour and 12 in. It's time to check out. I hope everybody got a lot of great feedback here today and enjoyed some of the information. As usual, make sure to leave lots of comments. Love to get your feedback. And we will keep answering and responding and give you some dialogue in return. In the meantime, AV, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you back here Friday morning with Mr. Seymour.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Stay connected here at the latest Traded Black podcast. Another great episode under the belt. What'd y'all think? Do you like what we had to say? Please leave any comments below. And as usual, make sure to subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to smash that like button, leave some comments, as I said before, and subscribe to our channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.